We've been getting tons of comments and questions about when we're going to bring some Indian content back to the Drive for History. Ultra fun day today. We've got out the Herm Levine 1935 Indian Speed King. Super cool bike. I'm going to tell you all about it here in a couple minutes. This week on Drive for History, we're highlighting bikes with character and personality. So machines, not stock bikes, not your off the assembly line restorations and original paint bikes. These are all bikes dripping with the character and the attitude and the personality of their previous owners. So what we're staring at today, guys, 1935 Indian Chief. This is a 74 cubic inch machine, 3-speed transmission made by Indian right in a Springfield, Massachusetts plant. They probably made 5,000 or 6,000 of these bikes from brand new. I can guarantee you none of them look like this. So this bike was owned, ridden, initially sold new by Herm Levine. He was an Indian dealer in Easton, Pennsylvania, and Herm was just one of those character guys. He's absolute flamboyant personality. He actually had another slightly later Chief that was very similar to this with the big stripe setup. So now the 35 Indian Chief, special year for Indian. They had already gone to the circulating oil system down here on the engine. Now, Harley debuted the circulating system in 1936. Indian beat them to the punch by a couple years. So this is the dry sump oiling system. There's your sump valve down in the bottom, circulates oil down back to the oil tank right up here in the front. So reminiscent of the Harleys of the earlier days, the Indians had gas on one side, gas in the rear quadrant of the right side tank, and then oil up there in front. Full circulating oil tank, where Harley at the time, their upper tanks just were for the total loss bikes. Now this bike is set up to ride. It is so incredibly comfortable, and he's just made all these neat little modifications that are far, far, far from a standard 1935 Chief. One of my favorite things about this bike is the stance, or the way that you sit on the bike. Now, one of the things you notice, bikes of this era traditionally all had floorboards. What Herm's done on this bike, because the bike is geared to the moon, obvious that Herm liked to ride fast. One of the first things that Herm did on this bike was raise up his controls. He's actually ditched the floorboards altogether, which would have been nice and low down here, for mid pegs, and then custom controls where everything's right there on your foot. So brake right here on this side, over on the other side, same thing, suicide style jammer clutch. It's spring loaded. It's got excellent positive action. Just really, really cool setup. It's so different than a standard machine of the same year, or anything really even close to the 1935 and on Chiefs. So now we call this one a half bagger. Herm set up with the high pipes, double high straight pipes here, single bag on the left side, mild storage, luggage rack here, solo seat. And one of the neat things about this bike also is the handlebar setup. And again, it all goes with the stance. This bike, you just feel like an absolute tough guy riding this thing. It's got Crocker steering dampener, entire custom handlebar setup here. So you got stock Indian flat bars, but with a custom riser setup that he's actually made, starting with the base of some 1935 Indian handlebars. Chopped off the handlebars, made the custom little riser setup to get those flat bars considerably higher. So this bike is so incredibly fast, as I said earlier. Second gear, you're shifting into third, probably right about 65 miles an hour. Thing will wind up to 95, maybe even 100 miles an hour, just the way it is. So the motor itself, big, huge Bonneville cams. Bonneville cams were basically the hot setup for the Indians. This one's been stroked to 80 cubic inches, so it carburates amazing. You can hear it in the lope. It's just one powerful machine for a flathead setup. Now, 1935 was a rigid frame Chief. Indian actually went to a rear suspension setup in 1940. These rigid frame Indian Chiefs are really some of the most desirable American motorcycles of the pre-war era. So now, paint job on this thing, super cool tiger stripe setup, and Herm's even got the Speed Kings decal right there on the gas tank. And one of those things where you don't just put that Speed King on any old motorcycle. This thing beat its fair share of knuckleheads, and Really cool setup. So we're going to fire it up here in just a minute. Now, Herm was a dealer in Easton, Pennsylvania, and after Herm closed his dealership in 1953, he moved down to Daytona, opened up a leather shop called Herm's Leather Togs. We've actually got a few leather garments, jackets inside that were made at Herm's place, and really proud to display those with the bike. So we're going to get this thing fired up, a couple prime kicks, and we ought to be ready to go. You can hear that compression. Here we go. Oh, almost. Such a nice load to it. You can hear those big old cams. This thing smokes like an absolute freight train. We bought this bike about 10 or 12 years ago from a good friend of ours, Rocky Halter in Maslin, Ohio. Rocky's just a renowned Indian guy, knew that this bike had wheels through time written all over it. So incredibly proud to display it. One of these days here soon, we're going to get this bike back into the shop up on the lift, pull the top end, valve job, new rings, get this thing running like it should be. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to crank it up one more time. Go for a ride. Thanks for tuning in. Drive for History all this week. We got bikes with character and personality. As you can see, the Herm Levine Speed King fits the bill perfect. So I'm going for a ride.